Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be replacing brake lines on a 2002 Jeep Wrangler using LinesToGo part number BLJ-101-SS. While this particular installation is being performed on a 2002 Jeep Wrangler, this set of lines will also fit the following year, make, and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Tools required: 10mm and 19mm sockets and ratchet, 8mm, 10mm, 11mm, 12mm, 14mm, and 3/8 inch wrenches, flat blade screwdriver, pliers and cutting pliers, drain pan, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be easy. Start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal using a 10mm or a 12mm wrench. Next, use a 12mm wrench to remove the two fittings from the master cylinder. Remove the two fittings on the driver's side of the proportioning valve using a 14mm wrench. Remove the primary and secondary brake lines from the vehicle. Use a 14mm wrench to remove the three remaining fittings at the proportioning valve. Raise and support the vehicle. Remove all four wheels using a 19mm socket. Inside of both front wheel wells, remove the plastic push clips that secure the rubber splash guards and remove the guards from the vehicle. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the fitting from the left front brake hose. If the fitting is seized to the line, you can cut the line and remove the fitting after. Remove the left front brake line from the vehicle. Remove the right front brake line from the plastic clips and cut the line using a pair of cutting pliers at the front of the left front wheel well. Remove the rear section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the fitting from the right front flex hose. Remove the remaining section of the right front brake line from any remaining plastic clips and remove it from the vehicle. This kit also includes a replacement fuel vent line. Underneath the vehicle, remove the rear feed brake line and the vent line from the plastic clips along the frame. Cut the rear brake line and vent line near the front underneath the vehicle. Remove the vent line from the rubber hose at the front and remove the forward sections of both lines from the vehicle. Remove the lines from any remaining plastic clips at the rear of the vehicle. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the top of the rear flex hose and remove the rear section of the rear brake line from the vehicle. Inside of the left rear wheel well, remove the rubber hose from the rear of the vent line. Remove the rear section of the vent line from the vehicle. At the passenger side of the rear axle, you can either loosen the two bolts at the top of the clamp using a 10mm socket that secures the axle line, or use a screwdriver to pry the bracket up if the bolts are seized. Use a 3/8 of an inch wrench to remove the threaded fittings from both rear wheel cylinders along with the rear flex hose union. Remove both rear axle lines from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new LinesToGo stainless steel brake lines, start by installing the right rear axle line labeled 06B into position. Start one fitting into the right rear wheel cylinder and the other fitting into the passenger side of the rear flex hose union. Tighten both fittings using a 3/8 of an inch wrench. Secure the right rear axle line into the metal bracket. Next, install the left rear axle line labeled 06A into position. Start one fitting into the left rear wheel cylinder and the other fitting into the driver's side of the rear flex hose union. Tighten both fittings using a 3/8 of an inch wrench. Next, install the rear section of the LinesToGo vent line labeled B into position. Secure the line into the plastic clips. Connect the hose at the rear of the vent line. Next, install the front section of the LinesToGo vent line labeled A into position and secure it into the plastic clips. Connect the two sections of line using the rubber hose noting the color-coded connection. Connect the hose at the front of the vent line. Next, install the rear section of the LinesToGo rear brake line labeled 05B into position. Start the rear threaded fitting into the top of the rear flex hose by hand and tighten it using a 3/8 of an inch wrench. Next, install the front section of the rear brake line labeled 05A into position and secure it into the plastic clips. Connect the front and rear sections of the rear brake line using the supplied union noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Start the front threaded fitting into the front passenger side port in the proportioning valve and tighten it using a 14mm wrench. Tighten the union using a 12mm and a 14mm wrench. Next, install the first section of the right front LinesToGo brake line labeled 04A into position. Start the top fitting into the rear-facing port in the proportioning valve. Install the next section of the right front LinesToGo brake line labeled 04B into position. Connect the two lines at the left front of the vehicle using the supplied union noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Start the other fitting into the right front flex hose and tighten it using a 3/8 of an inch wrench. Secure the line into the plastic clips. Tighten the union using a 12mm and a 14mm wrench. Next, install the left front LinesToGo brake line labeled 03 into position. Start the top fitting into the passenger side rear port in the proportioning valve by hand. Start the other fitting into the top of the left front flex hose and tighten it using a 3/8 of an inch wrench. Tighten the fittings for the left front and right front lines in the proportioning valve using a 14mm wrench. Replace both front splash guards and secure them using the plastic push clips. Next, install the primary LinesToGo brake line labeled 01 into position. Start the top fitting into the rear port in the master cylinder and the bottom fitting into the driver's side rear port in the proportioning valve. Tighten both fittings using a 12mm and a 14mm wrench. Next, install the secondary LinesToGo brake line labeled 02 into position. Start the top fitting into the front port in the master cylinder and the bottom fitting into the driver's side front port in the proportioning valve. Tighten both fittings using an 11mm and a 14mm wrench. Bleed all four wheels using an 8mm and a 10mm wrench, making sure to keep the master cylinder reservoir topped up with fluid. Replace all four wheels and torque to your manufacturer's recommended specification using a 19mm socket. Reconnect the negative battery terminal and tighten it using a 10mm or 12mm wrench. This concludes the installation of stainless steel brake lines on a 2002 Jeep Wrangler using LinesToGo part number BLJ-101-SS. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992. Email us at info@linestogo.com or check out our website link below. Don't forget to take advantage of our free next day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you in our next video.